Imagine you're standing in this massive, wide open field.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. And you are told that somewhere out there in the tall grass, there is an invisible electric fence.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. You can't see it. You have no idea where the perimeter is. And honestly, you don't even know for sure if it's plugged in.
That is terrifying. I mean, most people would probably just freeze, right?
Exactly. They'd huddle right in the dead center of the field, just terrified of taking a single step, constantly anticipating a shock that, might never actually come.
Right. Just completely paralyzed by the idea of it.
But what if someone else just walked to the very edge of the field, brushed right past where that boundary was supposed to be, and realized, hey, there's no electricity at all.
Ah, so the fence isn't in the field. It's just in your head.
Nailed it. And that invisible boundary and how we actually build it ourselves is the core of what we're looking at today. Welcome to today's deep dive.
I'm really excited for this one.
Me too. So today, our mission is to unpack a modern short story that really functions as a political allegory. It's called Two Canadian Brothers by Sean Dempsey.
And just to give you, the listener, a bit of context, this story comes to us from a blog called The Opposition.
Right. And that blog explicitly focuses on libertarian themes.
It does. It's very upfront about that ideology.
Which is important to note because our goal in this deep dive isn't to, take a side or endorse the author's political viewpoints. We're just here to objectively explore this fascinating way he uses fiction to dissect concepts like authority, compliance, and individual freedom.
Absolutely. We're looking at the mechanics of the story, and the premise immediately challenges our assumptions about where power actually originates.
Yeah, because usually we assume a ruler enforces control through sheer physical presence,
Okay,
right?
right.
Like soldiers or police.
Exactly, the threat of force. But Dempsey's story flips the traditional idea of law and order on its head. He removes the physical presence of the oppressor almost entirely.
It's so wild. So the story drops us into what he calls this indistinct corner of a Canadian kingdom.
Right, which is just a bizarre geopolitical space to begin with.
It really is. The borders of this kingdom are supposedly always expanding on paper, but practically speaking, no one ever actually visits these outer reaches.
Right.
And overseeing it all is a wise king who claims to own absolutely everything in the realm.
But he's totally detached.
Completely.
Yeah.
He never walks the land. He doesn't till the soil. He doesn't interact with the people. He just governs with this increasing abstract attentiveness from afar.
What's fascinating here is how the author establishes the psychological groundwork for tyranny. That geographical detachment is the whole foundation of his argument.
Right, because the oppressor doesn't actually need to be omnipresent.
Exactly. The king's power is absolute in the realm of theory, like on paperwork.
Mm.
But practically, the guy is a ghost.
A ghost on a throne.
Yeah. It's essentially a structural setup for a psychological test.
Yeah.
By removing the immediate physical threat, the author forces the citizens to decide exactly how they're going to respond.
They have to figure out how to deal with an authority that only exists in the abstract, which brings us to the actual subjects of that test. The two brothers.
Right. They inherit adjoining lands in this indistinct kingdom.
And they represent two wildly different mindsets.
Okay, let's unpack this. We've got the Western brother first.
Oh, the Western brother. He's something else.
He really is. He adopts a strategy of anticipatory obedience. He is incredibly anxious, fastidious, and just entirely consumed by the king's distant presence.
Right. For him, a royal decree isn't just a rule you follow to avoid a parking ticket or whatever.
No, he elevates obedience to a moral virtue.
Yeah.
He treats the king's word as divine revelation.
He truly believes that if he can just become the perfect, most proactive subject, his compliance will somehow guarantee his kid's future. I mean, think of it like this. Imagine the Western brother as that incredibly anxious employee at a massive corporation.
Oh, I know the type.
Right. He's the guy constantly refreshing his inbox, desperate to find and strictly obey every single new memo from corporate HR.
Even if HR doesn't even know his name.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the Eastern brother is the guy in the cubicle next to him who just puts his head down, does his job, and assumes HR won't bother him if he stays quiet.
That's a perfect analogy. The Eastern brother possesses what the text literally calls a quiet and almost negligent skepticism.
Negligent skepticism. I love that phrasing.
It's brilliant because he isn't some grand rebel, He isn't building barricades or writing manifestos.
Right. He just applies basic logistics. If a king claims to own everything, he cannot possibly enforce his will upon everyone individually.
Right, and that negligent skepticism is a very specific, and actually very dangerous posture for a citizen to take in an authoritarian system.
Wait, dangerous for the citizen or the system?
Dangerous for the system. Because he isn't mounting a political resistance, which the state actually knows how to handle and crush.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, instead, he's just apathetic toward the artificial structures of the state. He recognizes that absolute control is logistically impossible.
Right, because bureaucracies require the friction of engagement to actually function.
Exactly. By simply ignoring the king's distant claims, the Eastern Brother denies the state the interaction it needs to materialize its power.
But a system of control only works if the subjects behave as if they're being watched. And Dempsey really puts these opposing theories to the test when the king starts issuing economic decrees.
Right. This is where we move from theory to practice.
Yeah, and the very first one is a tax on the kingdom's pigs. And honestly, this is where the Western Brothers' logic completely baffles me.
It's painful to read.
It really is. He doesn't wait for a tax collector to arrive. He actively travels to the castle to ask the courtiers what the king's will is for his land.
He literally initiates his own subjugation.
Yes, like, why would anyone actively seek out an authority just to find out how to surrender their property?
Because for the Western Brother, ambiguity is far more terrifying than oppression.
Wow.
Yeah. If you wait for the tax collector, he might be found in violation of a rule he didn't even know existed. In his mind, ignorance of the law is a moral failure.
So by traveling to the castle and demanding to be taxed, he feels like he's doing the right thing?
Exactly. He reclaims this perverse sense of agency. He feels like he's participating in the order of the kingdom.
Well, the cost of that participation is staggering. The courtiers tell him he has to give the fattest and strongest pig from every litter to the crown.
And he obeys reverently.
He does. And as a direct result of this self-inflicted tax, his 4 children literally cry from hunger that winter.
It's devastating.
It is. He watches his family starve to preserve his status as a compliant subject.
The author is really mapping out the physical toll of an ideology here. The Western Brother isn't starving because the king's men pillaged his farm.
No, he essentially performed the pillaging himself.
Right. The oppression has been successfully outsourced to the oppressed.
Okay, contrast that with the Eastern Brother. He hears about the decree, and his negligent skepticism kicks right in.
Right. He reasons that pigs are many and the king is one.
So he just ignores the rule. He slaughters and breeds his animals however he sees fit. And the crucial detail here, nobody ever comes to check on him.
Nope. The authority only had reach with the Western Brother because he literally handed them a map to his farm.
Exactly. But Dempsey pushes this even further. The second decree moves from taxing agricultural products to essentially taxing luck.
The 4-leaf clovers.
Yes, the king demands an ounce of silver for every 4-leaf clover found on a subject's land.
Which is just absurd.
Completely absurd. Now, if someone taxes you on 4-leaf clovers, basic logic dictates you simply stop looking for them.
Or you just don't declare the ones you find.
Right. But the Western Brother, here's where it gets really interesting. Why does he actively seek out his own ruin again?
Well, he's terrified. He ties his entire identity to the law.
He frantically audits his own soil. He turns over the dirt, counting leaves with mounting dread, because the more he looks, the more he finds.
And the more he finds, the more silver he owes.
Exactly. He ends up mortgaging his own land just to pay for the clovers he forced himself to discover. I have to ask, is this a commentary on how moral duty can be weaponized against good-intentioned people?
Oh, 100%. Dempsey is illustrating a catch-22 of compliance here. The tragedy is that the Western Brother is essentially enforcing his own poverty.
He is bankrupting himself over a weed.
Right. And you have to look at the author's specific phrasing here. He says that silver, which used to be a measure of security, became instead a measure of his compliance.
A measure of his compliance, wow.
Wealth is no longer a tool to secure his family's independence. It's a metric of his submission to the state. The more silver he gives away, the more righteous he feels.
Even as he loses his land, the state has convinced him that his own poverty is a sign of civic virtue.
Meanwhile, the Eastern Brother applies simple logic.
Bulletproof logic, he says. What is not sought is not found, and what is not found cannot be owed.
Exactly. He doesn't look for clovers. He keeps his silver, and he expands his fields.
To any outside observer, he just looks like a guy who is heavily favored by fortune.
But Dempsey is setting a trap with this narrative.
He really is. We've seen the loss of pigs and silver establish this pattern of economic self-destruction. But to test the absolute limits of these philosophies, the author escalates the stakes.
From property to profound personal trauma.
Yeah. The final, darkest decree regarding the marriage of the daughters.
This is where the story gets incredibly dark.
It does. The king issues a decree reserving the right to the royal bed for the first night of any new bride's marriage.
A historical trope often called prima nocta.
Right. And you might assume this would be the breaking point for the Western brother. Like, surely he'd draw the line at his own child.
But his obedience is now a condition of existence.
That's exactly how the text describes it. So he actually informs the king of his daughter's wedding. She is violently taken by the king's men and returned the next morning.
And he knows it's wrong. The story says he knows a great wickedness occurred.
But his soul refuses to entertain defiance. It's chilling. And I want to raise a pointed question for you, the listener, right now. How often do people tolerate unthinkable things simply because they are packaged as official procedure?
Oh, that's a brilliant point. Institutions use official processes to numb our moral outrage.
Because Dempsey writes that the decree's language was so ceremonious that it concealed without disguising its violation.
This raises an important question about how Dempsey uses this extreme violation to separate blind obedience from actual morality. The Western brother's virtue has become entirely hollow.
He chose compliance over the protection of his own family.
He did. His pursuit of perfect adherence to the rules completely stripped him of his humanity.
Which brings us to the Eastern brother. Finally faced with a decree he is completely unwilling to passively ignore.
Right, passive ignoring isn't enough when your daughter's safety's on the line.
So he takes action. He actively hides his daughter's wedding in the woods.
And because there is no official record,
The king's men never show up. She's completely spared.
it proves his theory. The system relies entirely on citizens self-reporting their lives into the machinery of the state.
Which means we really need to zoom out and look at the illusion of control here.
Yeah, the aftermath for the two families is very telling.
The Western family is left hollow with these vacant stares, while the Eastern family smiles, believing freedom comes from God, not man.
And the king. He cannot actually distinguish between the two lands. His control is just an illusion.
An illusion made real only by the, what does Dempsey call it? The abdication of self of his subjects.
Exactly.
The author explicitly states that ruin in such a kingdom lies in what is surrendered, not what is demanded.
To really understand this, we have to look at Sean Dempsey's foundational beliefs.
Right. The source material gives us some great biographical details. He is a free stater in New Hampshire.
Which is a movement heavily focused on libertarian principles.
Yeah, and he's a staunch believer in the U.S. Constitution. He argues that the principles of founders like Jefferson, Washington, Franklin, and Adams are sacrosanct.
And worth dying for.
So what does this all mean? How does Dempsey define the law in this context?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Dempsey's libertarian thesis is that authoritarian laws do not exist in a vacuum.
They need us.
Right. They require the capitulation of the public to be enacted. A piece of paper with a royal seal can't physically take a pig or collect silver.
Right. The vanishing of self in perfect compliance is the true enabler of tyranny.
The state demands, but it's the citizen who surrenders.
Wow. Okay, so to wrap up this deep dive, Dempsey's Two Canadian Brothers uses this tale of two contrasting mindsets to argue that authority is often just a phantom.
A phantom given substance only by our willingness to surrender to it.
Exactly. The story clearly shows the tragic consequences of treating unquestioning obedience as the highest moral good.
It really is a stark warning about prioritizing process over principle.
It is. So we want to leave you with one final provocative thread to pull on your own.
Think about your own daily routines.
Right. We don't live in an agricultural kingdom. We aren't tallying clovers. But if, as the author suggests, power requires our active participation to be real,
How much of the control you feel in your everyday life, from societal expectations to institutional rules, is actually being enforced upon you?
and how much of it is just you acting like the Western brother, enthusiastically generating data, actively searching the grass for clovers to pay a tax no one is actually collecting? Think about the smart devices in your home or the location services on your phone. Are our digital footprints simply the modern four-leaf clovers we have been conditioned to harvest and hand over?
It's definitely something to think about.
It really is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.